Hello, my name is Michael Hynes. I'm the Superintendent of Schools for the Patchogue Medford School District in New York. And I'd like to talk to you about women in education who inspire and inform. I'd like to start off with one of my heroes. Her name is Diane Ravitch. You may know her in a multitude of levels as far as the work she's done over the 40-plus years in education. Most notably, she is not only the Assistant Secretary of Education under George Bush, the first go-round, but one of my favorite books as far as what she's done is called Reign of Error, that she's authored, The Hoax of Privatization Movement and the Danger to America's Public Schools. Dr. Ravitch is not only a professor at NYU, but she started out believing in the school choice movement back in the 80s and early 90s, and testing. She was a major advocate of testing, and then she's switched over. She's changed her viewpoints on those things. Now she's an outspoken critic, so much so where she has her own blog, and her blog, which is written daily, is a treasure to many who follow her as far as her, not only her love of public education, but all the things that she does to support it, and we're very thankful for that. The next person I'd like to talk about is Deborah Meier. Deborah Meier, much like Diane Ravitch, has been in schools, worked within schools for over 4 decades, not only as an educator, most notably as a kindergarten teacher, primary school teacher, but also as a principal, and not just in New York City, but also in Boston as well. One of my favorite books that focuses on Deborah's work it's called Those Who Dared. And it's a select few educators who have made a difference over the years, and she's mentioned in here. And one of the things that I really admire about Deborah's work is not only her working with minority children and schools, but she's also a co-chair of the Coalition of Essential Schools as well, and is considered by many to be the founder of the small schools movement. So her work is considerable, and she's beyond inspiring. For those of you who have been in the educational space for quite some time, you probably have heard of Dr. Linda Darling-Hammond, who is, as of now, professor at Stanford University. It seems like Stanford University has a treasure trove of educators out there who really make a difference. She's at the Graduate School of Education, and a lot of the work that she focuses on is about teacher education and educational equity within schools. She's written over 25 books, over 500 articles as far as her contribution to the educational space, and I strongly encourage you to read about her work and her thoughts. I can tell you right now, the presidents plural have asked for her help in a multitude of ways over the years, and I strongly encourage you to see what she's done. Carol Dweck, she may not work in education per se, but her work as far as what she's written back in 2006, I'm sure you've heard of it. The book is called Mindset. To me, it's one of those groundbreaking books that transcends not only, let's say, the business world, but certainly education as well. And what she focuses on are 2 different thought processes, a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. Clearly, if you think about mindset and what that means, it's really about how attitude determines everything that you do. And to be honest with you, when I first read this book, it's very easy to understand why it's so important to focus on our kids and what their attitudes and beliefs are, not only about themselves, but about what the purpose of education is. Heidi Hayes Jacobs. Back when I was a teacher, oh my gosh, way back in the 90s, this is one of the first people I was actually introduced to. Her work really revolves around curriculum, not only mapping, but teaching and learning, and how you integrate curriculum and looking at a scope and sequence, and how you develop that over time, and looking at essential questions for teachers, and how to create a roadmap over the year and to look at things. One of her most successful books, and again, this is an old one, it's called Mapping the Big Picture, And it's one of, as far as I'm concerned, one of the most important pieces of literature out there for teachers, and I encourage you to look at the work that she's produced over the years. So I also want to talk about two other educators, well actually one educator. Her name is Dr. Carol Burris. She's a former high school principal on Long Island in New York. She was also a former Principal of the Year in New York, and now what she does, she is the Executive Director of the Network for Public Education. And she's been in that role for a few years, and what she does is clearly she's an advocate for public education. She creates spaces for teachers and for parents to talk about things that how public schools benefit all children, and what we can do to ensure that public schools are around for years to come. And her work, I think, is essential not only in her lens as seeing things through as an educator, but most, I think, notably as well is her focus on nationally what we can do to preserve public education in the future. Another person I want to talk about is Jeanette Deutermann. For those of you in New York, you may know of Jeanette's work. Jeanette is a parent on Long Island. She is the mother of the Long Island opt-out movement, where over 100,000 students in New York State have opted out of taking standardized tests, namely 3 through 8 tests in New York State. And she started this movement not only because of her children in a local school district, but she felt for all children that testing practices and what we do with those tests, how it's not in the best interest of children. And she's given parents a voice, again, not only locally, but certainly I think within the great state of New York and beyond. So Jeanette's work also is embraced in NYSAPE, which is a New York affiliation of New York State Allies for Public Education, and a lot of their work you can find online. But I want to end with, I think, the mother of primary school education, and to me, if you are an educator, you know who this person is, and that's Maria Montessori, or I will say Dr. Montessori, where her work started in the 1920s. And you can look at any textbook as a upcoming teacher and or educator in some way. You'll always find her name somewhere within that book and her work. And her work primarily focuses on child-centered education, how we need to group kids in a multi-age way, and giving kids significant blocks of times to work on projects, really undetermined time blocks of time for kids to work on things. Guided choices, not telling kids what to do 24/7, but allowing them to explore, to figure out who they are at those very early developmental stages. And then finally, focusing on the teacher, the child, and the learning environment, that triangle that's so important to make sure that educational space is nurturing for all kids' needs. If you haven't heard about Maria Montessori, I strongly encourage you to read all of the things that she's done. There are actually 4,000 Montessori schools still in the United States right now, and they are a blessing. So that is my list. I hope you can look up those wonderful educational advocates and scholars, and thank you very much.